They're in full retreat, and even their own people are calling them out for it. The White House is now distancing Trump from the domestic terrorist claims about Alex Pretti. DHS officials are anonymously telling CBS News that leadership is gaslighting the public. Conservative media has turned on Trump. Republican senators are demanding investigation. And the evidence handling was so bad it could destroy any future prosecution. This is what a cover-up looks like when it collapses. If you're new here, I'm Jordan Vale, and we're building a community of people who refuse to stand by while democracy is under attack. We need voices like yours in this fight, so hit that subscribe button. Let me start with yesterday's White House press briefing, because this is where the retreat became official. ABC News chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce asked Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt a direct question. Noem said Pretti committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled him a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree? Here's Leavitt's answer.
Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Pretti committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Pretti a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Pretti in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Pretti for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child.
Leavitt said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Pretti in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts and the investigation lead itself. Let the facts lead. That's what they're saying now. So let me remind you what they actually said on Saturday, just 3 days ago. Stephen Miller called Pretti a domestic terrorist and a would-be assassin who tried to murder federal agents. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem repeatedly characterized Pretti as violent and intent on domestic terrorism. She said, this individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino said Pretti wanted to massacre law enforcement and do maximum damage. That was Saturday. Domestic terrorist, would-be assassin, wanted to massacre law enforcement. That's the facts. Now, 3 days later, Leavitt says Trump hasn't characterized Pretti that way and wants to let the facts lead. This was a complete walkback. And here's what makes this even more remarkable. DHS officials are leaking to the press about how furious they are with their own leadership. CBS News published a bombshell report yesterday. The headline, A Terrible Miscalculation. Officials' response to fatal Minneapolis shooting causes anger among some at DHS. According to CBS News, soon after Minneapolis ICU nurse Alex Pretti was shot and killed by a Border Patrol agent, top Trump administration officials made sweeping categorical statements about the deadly shooting before a full investigation had begun. CBS reported these statements by senior administration officials, many of which have been directly contradicted by videos of the incident and witness accounts, have caused internal frustration among some at DHS, who are increasingly concerned about the agency's reputation. Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation told CBS News. Multiple sources, direct knowledge, internal frustration, concerned about the agency's reputation. And here's the devastating quote from an anonymous DHS official who works on immigration enforcement. The official said, when we gaslight and contradict what the public can plainly see with their own eyes, we lose all credibility, and it's going to damage our reputation for generations. A DHS official explicitly described their leadership's response as gaslighting. contradicting what the public can plainly see, damaging the agency's reputation for generations. CBS News reported that this Homeland Security official expressed concern about the possibility of self-inflicted reputational harm being caused by the strong language used by top officials following Pretti's killing. Self-inflicted reputational harm. That's what's happening inside DHS right now. Officials watching their leadership make categorical statements that are directly contradicted by video evidence, and knowing it's destroying the agency's credibility. But it's not just DHS officials who turned on them. The Wall Street Journal editorial board published a piece on Sunday. And remember, the journal's op-ed pages are reliably conservative, traditionally pro-Trump. According to Common Dreams reporting on the editorial, the Wall Street Journal called Pretti's killing the worst incident to date in what is becoming a moral and political debacle for President Donald Trump and his administration. The Hill reported that the journal's Monday editorial declared that ICE's operations in Minneapolis were becoming a moral and political debacle for the Trump presidency. Here's what the journal wrote, according to The Hill. Videos of an event aren't always definitive, but this is how it looks to us. Pretti attempted, foolishly, to assist a woman who had been pepper-sprayed by agents. Multiple agents then tackled Pretti, and he had a phone in one hand as he lay on the ground. An agent discovered a concealed gun on Pretti and disarmed him. An agent then shot Pretti, and multiple shots followed. The journal pushed back on Miller directly. He was a nurse without a criminal record. Pretti made a tragic mistake by interfering with ICE agents, but that warranted arrest, not a death sentence. And the journal concluded, Mr. Miller's mass deportation methods are turning immigration, an issue Mr. Trump owned in 2024, into a political liability for Republicans in 2026. That's the Wall Street Journal, pro-Trump editorial board, calling this a moral and political debacle. And the New York Post, also owned by Rupert Murdoch, also traditionally pro-Trump, published their own editorial. According to The Hill, the Post concluded by telling Trump, the American people didn't vote for these scenes, and you can't continue to order them to not believe their lying eyes. The Post wrote, it's time to de-escalate in Minneapolis, Mr. President. Not because you're wrong to enforce immigration law, nor to go after fraudsters who've stolen billions in federal funds, but because these enforcement tactics won't turn the tide, and instead are backfiring. They wrote, swing voters, Hispanics and independents who turned to you at the last election, see U.S. citizens dying at federal agents' hands, and recoil in horror. And they said, the hasty and misleading rhetoric coming out of the administration needs to stop. And while Pretti was horribly misguided, there is no evidence he was a terrorist intent on a massacre of law enforcement. Both the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post, Rupert Murdoch properties, pro-Trump editorial boards, both condemning the administration's handling of this. And then Republican senators started breaking ranks. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina warned the Trump administration against any attempt to shut out local and state law enforcement from the investigation. Tillis said, there must be a thorough and impartial investigation into yesterday's Minneapolis shooting. Any administration official who rushes to judgment and tries to shut down an investigation before it begins are doing an incredible disservice to the nation and to President Trump. Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana called for a full joint federal and state investigation and said the credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska said on Sunday, according to The Hill, that the nation had witnessed a horrifying situation in Minneapolis, and while reiterating his support for ICE, added, I expect a prioritized, transparent investigation into this incident. These are Republicans, Trump allies, using words like horrifying and calling for transparent investigation. And then CBS News revealed something that could destroy any future prosecution of this case. CBS News, with multiple officials confirming, Pretti's handgun has no documented chain of custody. Here's what that means. The gun was placed on a vehicle seat. It was not secured in the required plastic evidence bag. It was not labeled with standard identifying details like date, item, or handler name. This violates strict protocols for officer-involved shootings. And according to CBS, this could make the evidence inadmissible in court. It could jeopardize any future criminal or civil rights prosecution. A former Homeland Security investigations official told CBS the crime scene was compromised. Think about what that means. The central piece of physical evidence in this shooting, the gun that DHS says justified the use of lethal force, has no chain of custody. That's either catastrophic incompetence or conduct that raises serious evidence tampering concerns. Either way, it could make prosecution impossible. And here's another sign that they know this is falling apart. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino has been relieved of his command in Minneapolis and is expected to return to California. According to CBS News, with 3 sources confirming, Bovino is expected to leave the Minneapolis area soon. He's been relieved of his command in Minneapolis and is expected to return to California's El Centro sector. And according to NBC News, Bovino has been stripped of his title as Commander-at-Large of the U.S. Border Patrol. His access to social media accounts was suspended, and he was expected to return to the Border Patrol station in El Centro, California, briefly before retiring. Bovino was the one who claimed Pretti wanted to massacre law enforcement. He was the one who shut down the press conference after 2 questions when a reporter asked him to specify when Pretti pulled his gun. Now he has been stripped of his title, had his social media suspended, and is being sent back to California. And Trump himself did a complete 180 on Governor Tim Walz. On Saturday and Sunday, Trump blamed Walz and Democrats for Pretti's death. He claimed Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Frey were inciting insurrection. He suggested Pretti intended to use his gun against agents. Then on Monday, according to ABC News, President Trump spoke with Minnesota's Democratic Governor, Tim Walz. Trump said it was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. Trump suddenly claimed alignment with the guy he was calling an insurrectionist 2 days earlier. According to CBS Minnesota's reporting on Walz's office statement, Trump agreed to look at pulling federal agents out of Minnesota and ensure state investigators can launch their own investigations instead of relying solely on DHS internal inquiries. And according to PBS NewsHour, Press Secretary Leavitt said that Tom Homan, the administration's border czar, would be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis during continued operations by federal immigration officers. That marks something of a change, PBS noted, as Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino had been the public face of operations in the city. So Bovino is out. Homan is in. Trump is suddenly on the same wavelength with Walz. The White House is distancing Trump from the domestic terrorist claims. DHS officials are calling it gaslighting. Conservative media is condemning the administration. Republican senators are demanding investigation. And the evidence handling was so catastrophic it could destroy any prosecution. This is what a collapse looks like. They don't retreat like this unless they know they're caught. The video evidence was too clear. Multiple independent analyses from Bellingcat, The Washington Post, and local forensic experts all found that the gun was removed before the shooting. And when your own DHS officials are anonymously telling reporters that leadership is gaslighting the public and damaging the agency's reputation for generations, you've lost control of the narrative. When the Wall Street Journal and New York Post editorial boards, pro-Trump, conservative, Rupert Murdoch-owned publications, are calling this a moral and political debacle and telling you to stop asking people not to believe their lying eyes, you know it's bad. When Republican senators who are supposed to be your allies are using words like horrifying and demanding transparent investigation, the political cover is gone. And when the evidence handling is so bad that the gun has no chain of custody, when the crime scene is described by former federal officials as compromised, that's not just incompetence. That raises serious questions about what they were trying to hide. Levitt said Trump wants to let the facts lead the investigation, but they already tried to lead the facts. Stephen Miller called Pretti a domestic terrorist and would-be assassin hours after the shooting, before any investigation concluded. Kristi Noem said he committed an act of domestic terrorism, and that's the facts, before the facts were even established. Ovino claimed Pretti wanted to massacre law enforcement, then refused to answer when a reporter asked him to specify when Pretti pulled his gun. They led with the narrative. The video destroyed the narrative, and now they're retreating. One more thing I want to mention, because it shows how far this has gone. According to Common Dreams, Chris Madel, an attorney who provided legal counsel to Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent who killed Renee Good, was until Monday also a Republican candidate for Minnesota governor. But Madel said that he dropped out of the race and implied that he would quit the GOP because he cannot support the National Republicans' stated retribution on the citizens of our state. He said, "Nor can I count myself a member of a party that won't speak up when our fellow citizens are being killed in the streets." A Republican candidate for governor, whose client is the ICE agent who killed Renee Good, and even he is quitting the party over this. That tells you how bad this has gotten. So where does this leave us? The White House is in full retreat. They're distancing Trump from the domestic terrorist claims. They're claiming he wants to let the facts lead, even though his officials rushed to judgment within hours. DHS officials are revolting internally, telling reporters that leadership is gaslighting the public and damaging the agency for generations. Conservative media has turned. Republican senators are demanding investigation. The evidence handling could destroy any prosecution. Bovino is being stripped of his title and sent away. And Trump is suddenly working together with the governor he called an insurrectionist. This is what happens when you lie about something that's caught on video from multiple angles and analyzed by gold standard investigative journalism outlets. The retreat proves they know exactly what they did, and they know the video evidence destroyed their cover story. Let me know what you think in the comments. Does the White House retreat prove they know they lied? What does it mean that even DHS officials are calling this gaslighting? And do you think there will be real accountability? Share this video. People need to see how quickly this narrative collapses when confronted with evidence. They need to understand that even conservative media and Republican senators are breaking ranks. We're building something here, a community that tracks not just what they say, but what happens when the evidence contradicts what they say. A community that notices when they retreat and asks why. Thanks for spending a few minutes digging into this with me. If you want more grounded, progressive commentary without the outrage bait, subscribe and stick around. Every time you watch, share, and engage, it helps build a community that believes democracy is worth understanding and defending. I'll see you in the next video.